Chapter 1: The Email War Begins. Monday mornings at Halden and Rowe were less start of the week and more gladiator arena. Interns walked on eggshells, middle management avoided eye contact, and at precisely 9:02 a.m., Evan's scream pierced the open office like a war horn. "Are you kidding me?" Heads turned. A few people ducked behind monitors. One brave soul, Charlie from legal, peeked over the cubicle wall with popcorn in hand. He had a front row seat to the agency's most reliable drama, Evan versus Ashton. Evan stood at his desk, brows drawn tight over dark, glinting eyes. He jabbed at his keyboard with the same energy someone might use to defuse a bomb. His shoulder-length hair, usually tied in a low, messy bun, was beginning to fray around his ears, always a sign of approaching disaster. "What now?" came the reply from across the floor. Calm, smooth, smug. Ashton leaned back in his chair like he had all the time in the world. His crisp white shirt was unwrinkled, sleeves perfectly rolled to mid-forearm, revealing strong forearms and an expensive watch ticking smugly on his wrist. He had a clean, razor-sharp jawline that looked like it was sculpted by someone with way too much time and good lighting. Evan stalked across the carpet and threw a file onto Ashton's desk. "You replaced my presentation." "I didn't replace it," Ashton said, lifting a brow. "I optimized it. You deleted my transitions, switched my copy, and changed the tagline. I made it cleaner. You made it boring." Ashton gave him a lazy half-smile, like he was trying not to be amused. "Well, at least I didn't include an unlicensed photo of a goat in business attire this time. That goat represented corporate dissonance and the absurdity of—" Evan stopped himself, threw up his hands, and let out a dramatic sigh that could have won an Oscar. "Listen, Goblin," Ashton said, standing smoothly, all 6-foot-something of him unfolding like a smug transformer. "We're both trying to win Mariana's approval, right? So why not use the better deck?" "Then use your own," Evan snapped. "Stop hijacking mine." The tension between them sparked like wires stripped of insulation. Neither backed down. Neither ever backed down. Their boss, Mariana Alvarez, chose that moment to step out of her glass-walled office, eyes glittering with the particular joy of someone who thrived on chaos. Her bright red blouse matched her lipstick, and she carried a reusable coffee cup with the words "messy but iconic" scrawled across it in gold foil. "Boys," she sang, sauntering toward them. "Is it Monday already?" "She overwrote my pitch," Evan said without missing a beat. "He submitted slides with Comic Sans," Ashton replied blandly. Mariana sipped her coffee and gave them both a look like she was watching her two favorite telenovela characters have a dramatic confrontation. "Great," she said. "You're both passionate. Good, because you're going to be working together." Silence. Pure, stunned silence. Then, "What?" "No, absolutely not." Mariana ignored their twin protests and turned, already strutting back toward her office. "You'll both head the new Oasis Water account. Co-leads. Same campaign, same deadlines. Same glory, or mutual destruction. Either way, I win." She paused at her door. "Try not to stab each other with fountain pens." The office buzzed with renewed interest. A few people whispered. One intern whispered to another, "I give it 2 weeks before one of them snaps and makes out with the other in the supply closet." The other intern nodded, completely serious. Back at their desks, Evan sat stiffly. Ashton calmly resumed typing. The war had escalated into a hostage situation. With coffee. And speaking of which, an hour later, just as Evan was crafting a particularly savage Slack message, a paper coffee cup slid into view beside his mouse. He blinked. Looked around. Ashton was on a call, not looking his way, but the ghost of a smirk curled at the corner of his mouth. Evan lifted the cup, on the side in handwriting so annoyingly neat it could have come from a robot. "Breathe." Your eyes twitching again. Evan's left eye had been twitching. He groaned and drank the coffee. By Wednesday, the campaign had become a battlefield littered with pettiness and passive aggression. Their workspace, once neutral ground, now resembled a demilitarized zone. Evan took to adjusting Ashton's meticulously aligned spreadsheets just a hair off-center. Ashton retaliated by accidentally switching Evan's beloved Spotify playlist of dramatic violin-heavy soundtracks with acoustic covers of boy band hits. During a brainstorming session, Evan tossed out an edgy concept involving holographic billboards and emotional storytelling. Ashton responded with a safer, more practical version, and when Mariana chose Ashton's pitch, Evan nearly combusted. "Great," Evan muttered later, stabbing his salad like it owed him money. Let's sell water with all the excitement of an instruction manual. I prefer to call it refined, Ashton replied without looking up from his grilled chicken wrap. Not everyone is moved by your water as emotional metaphor. It's literally life, Evan hissed. Do you not drink water? I do. I just don't cry over it. Not with that haircut, you don't, Ashton chuckled. You're obsessed with my hair. Evan threw a crouton at him. Despite it all, or maybe because of it, people around the office began noticing something strange. When they weren't at each other's throats, Evan and Ashton were good together, efficient, balanced, maddeningly in sync. Their arguments became faster, snappier, bordering on flirtation. Their debates, though heated, sparked real innovation. And somewhere along the line, Mariana stopped assigning them assistants. They worked best when no one else interfered. And they always worked late. Thursday night, 9:46 p.m. The office was mostly empty. A faint hum from the vending machine buzzed in the background. Crumpled wrappers and takeout boxes littered the long conference table. Evan stared at the screen, eyes burning. If I have to adjust that animation one more time, I swear to God I will sell my soul for decent kerning. You already did, Ashton said from the couch nearby, laptop open on his thighs. To Helvetica. Don't disrespect my fonts. Ashton stood, walked over, and leaned against the back of Evan's chair. Switch seats. I'll fix it. Evan blinked at him. What's your angle? I'm tired. You're cranky. And I don't want to hear you yelling at a computer again. Reluctantly, Evan gave in. Their shoulders brushed as they passed each other. Ashton's cologne, clean, a little woodsy, lingered in the air. Ashton worked in silence, fingers moving expertly. Evan watched from the couch, watching the lines of his rival's face in profile. The slope of his nose, the faint furrow of his brow when he concentrated, the slow rise and fall of his chest. He hated how attractive he was. Well, mostly. By the time Ashton closed the laptop, the file was perfect. It's ready, he said. No more Comic Sans, Evan groaned. Let it go. As they packed up, Ashton gestured toward the break room. You want one for the road? What, a coffee to go with my caffeine-induced trauma? But Ashton had already left. When Evan reached his desk to grab his coat, another cup was waiting for him. This time, the sticky note read, You do brilliant work, even if you're an infuriating goblin. Evan stared at it, blinked, then slowly, involuntarily, smiled, only a little. But it was a start. Chapter 2. You flirt like a corporate lawsuit. The change was subtle. The air between Evan and Ashton no longer sizzled with open hostility. It hummed with something quieter, deeper. Like an argument paused mid-sentence, a breath held too long. Still sharp, still sarcastic, but tinged with a knowing smile instead of a death glare. It started at a client dinner for the new Oasis water campaign, hosted in a pretentious rooftop restaurant with LED-lit menus and glass everything. Evan arrived 10 minutes late, hair tousled by the wind, blazer slightly rumpled, and lips curled into a grimace the second he spotted Ashton waving him over. There was only one seat open, right next to him. Of course, Evan muttered as he slid into the chair. Did you bribe the hostess? Don't flatter yourself, Ashton replied smoothly, offering him a menu. The hostess just has taste. Evan shot him a look. Ashton smiled, politely, dangerously. The kind of smile that made interns drop their phones and clients agree to ridiculous budgets. Dinner was a circus. Ashton was mid-pitch about hydration branding when Evan leaned in and whispered, Bet you can't smile like you mean it through the next 10 minutes. Ashton didn't flinch. Bet you can't sit still without twitching like you're about to lunge across the table and throttle someone. Their knees brushed under the table. Neither moved away. By dessert, Evan was laughing, actually laughing, as Ashton told a story about an overconfident CEO who once tried to rebrand Air. Evan's laugh wasn't sharp or defensive, it was real, crinkling the corners of his dark eyes, softening his usually firm jaw. Ashton, usually composed to the point of arrogance, looked at him like he was trying very hard not to reach across the table and touch his hand. On the way down to the valet, Evan nudged him. Still think I'm a goblin? I think you're the reason we're closing this deal, Ashton said, quieter than expected. Evan blinked, caught off guard. The car arrived before he could answer. It became routine after that, staying a little longer after work, finishing mock-ups and mood boards in the conference room while the rest of the staff trickled out. Some nights they worked in silence, others they talked. Evan, pen between his teeth, said one night, "You ever think about quitting?" Ashton didn't look up from his laptop. "Every Monday morning," Evan grinned. "Relatable." They talked about the campaign, about Mariana's erratic management style, about how Charlie from Legal was absolutely running the office betting pool. But then, without warning, the conversation drifted into deeper waters. Evan sat cross-legged on the conference room couch, nursing a third coffee. "I was engaged once," he said abruptly. Ashton's fingers stilled on the keyboard. "Yeah?" "Yeah, didn't last. He wanted a simpler life, fewer hours, fewer arguments." Ashton tilted his head. "You argued?" Evan snorted. "No, he just didn't get it, the ambition, the rush of winning a pitch. He thought I was choosing work over him. I wasn't. I just wanted both." Ashton nodded, thoughtful. "You're allowed to want both." There was a beat, a silence not uncomfortable, just heavy with things unsaid. "What about you?" Evan asked. "I grew up in a family where everything was a competition," Ashton said, voice level but low. "Grades, jobs, relationships. My older brother once framed my less ambitious personality as a flaw during a toast at my birthday dinner." Evan's lips curled. Yikes. Ashton chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Let's just say showing softness wasn't exactly rewarded. Evan looked at him. Really looked, past the pressed shirts and the perfect posture. And for the first time, he saw the quiet weight Ashton carried under all that polish. The next day, Ashton brought him a new kind of coffee. Half oat milk, 1 pump vanilla, no sugar. Exactly how Evan had ordered it once offhand at a coffee shop 3 weeks ago. Evan didn't say a word. But he drank it, every time. Friday night. Late. They were sitting side by side on the floor of the conference room. Papers spread out, their legs stretched out and slightly tangled. Takeout containers balanced on the table behind them. Laughter clung to the walls like leftover static. Evan had just finished mocking up a graphic with a cat surfing on a water bottle. Ashton was wheezing. "I swear to God," he gasped, "if you present that to Mariana." "She'll love it," Evan said, smug. "She's chaotic. She lives for unpredictability." "You're unpredictable. You're predictable. Like hell I am." They were both grinning now. Their shoulders were pressed together. Evan's arm brushed Ashton's every time he shifted. Their breath mingled in the small space between them, warm and close. "You know this tension isn't just hate, right?" Ashton said suddenly. Evan's smile faltered. He turned slowly and met Ashton's gaze. His voice, when it came, was quieter. "Don't flatter yourself." Ashton didn't flinch, just watched him, gray eyes soft but steady. Evan shifted, unsure what to say. There was something there in the way Ashton looked at him. Something patient, focused, a kind of quiet affection that felt more terrifying than any fight. He cleared his throat. "I mean, you're tolerable, I guess, for a guy who uses passive-aggressive sticky notes as a love language." Ashton smiled. It wasn't his usual smug smirk. It was smaller, realer. And then he leaned in, slow, intentional, giving Evan every chance to move. He didn't. Their lips met softly at first, like testing the weight of it, then again deeper, slower. Ashton's hand cupped Evan's jaw, thumb brushing the hinge. Evan made a sound, half sigh, half surprise, and melted forward. The kiss wasn't rushed. It wasn't messy or desperate. It was precise, like everything Ashton did. When they finally pulled back, Evan's voice was a breath against Ashton's lips. "You kiss like you're filing a very professional complaint," Ashton grinned. "You kiss like you're starting a fight. Maybe I am." But he didn't move away. Neither did Ashton. The next morning, the office was quiet. Evan arrived early, fueled by too little sleep and too many questions he wasn't ready to ask. His desk was empty, except for 2 coffee cups, one black, one his exact custom order. The second had a sticky note. "For when you pretend you're not falling for me." Evan stared at it, bit his bottom lip, then reached for the cup. He drank it all. Chapter 3. Petty Crimes and Coffee Crimes. The war had not ended. It had simply evolved. Evan strutted into the office at 8:59 a.m. on Tuesday morning and beelined straight to Ashton's desk, where he grinned like a cat who'd eaten every last canary. "Don't freak out," he said as Ashton looked up. "I don't like where this is going," Ashton replied calmly, though his eyes narrowed. Evan spun around once and dramatically dropped into Ashton's prized ergonomic chair. The one he'd special ordered for lumbar support, gel armrests, and the comfort level of a Swedish spa. Ah! Evan moaned obnoxiously, stretching like he'd just been reborn. I see why you gatekeep this chair. It's like sitting on the smug self-satisfaction of a man who alphabetizes his spice rack. Ashton's gaze was unimpressed. That's because you're currently sitting on it. Exactly. Without a word, Ashton reached down, unplugged Evan's mouse from his own desk setup, and walked off. What the? Hey! When Evan returned to his own desk, his office phone had mysteriously rerouted all calls directly to voicemail, and his Slack account had a new status, currently accepting apologies in the form of gift cards and groveling. Touche. The petty crimes escalated. Wednesday morning, Evan showed up wearing one of Ashton's silk ties. His silk tie. The exact dark navy one Ashton had left, draped over a chair in the conference room after a late-night meeting 2 weeks ago. Evan paired it with an aggressively mismatched shirt and strutted around the office like a runway menace. Ashton didn't react, until Evan got back from lunch to find a new mug on his desk. It was hideous. Neon pink. Glittery. It said in bold letters, "World's most overdramatic strategist." Evan loved it. He drank out of it all day like it was fine china. But somewhere beneath the layers of ridiculous pranks and snarky banter, something warmer was blooming. A rhythm. A familiarity. The kind of intimacy you didn't get from casual flirting or office gossip. They moved around each other with the confidence of people who had already memorized each other's habits. By Thursday, it was obvious to everyone that their rivalry was no longer just rivalry. It was foreplay. The breaking point came after a long, grueling client dinner that bled past 10 p.m. Evan was buzzing on adrenaline and half a bottle of Pinot Noir. Ashton looked like he could conquer a kingdom and also nap for 14 hours. The meeting had gone well. Too well. The client loved their pitch, praised their chemistry, asked, again, if they were a couple. Ashton had smiled and said, "We're just very compatible when it comes to brand messaging." Evan had kicked him under the table. On the car ride back, Ashton said, "You could have just said thank you." "You could have said no comment," Evan shot back, then added more softly, "You're not exactly subtle, you know." "No one's ever accused me of that." The silence stretched between them until Ashton said, offhandedly, "Come over. I'll open another bottle." Evan hesitated only half a second. "Only if you don't make me take off the tie." Ashton's smirk made his stomach flip. Ashton's apartment was exactly what Evan expected. Sleek, clean, annoyingly curated. It smelled faintly of cedar and order. Tall windows, black and white art. A single ficus that looked like it cost more than Evan's monthly coffee budget. "Minimalist chic," Evan said, dropping his coat on a perfectly arranged coat rack with more hooks than necessary. "Very serial killer with taste." "You say that like it's a bad thing," Ashton replied, pouring wine into oversized glasses. They sat on the couch, feet propped on the coffee table, a playlist humming something mellow in the background. A half-eaten cheese board sat forgotten between them. The wine hit them slowly, loosening their shoulders, softening the air. At one point, Evan stood to stretch and noticed a second toothbrush in Ashton's bathroom. His pink. Slightly bent. He didn't say anything. They fell asleep on the couch somewhere between midnight and 2, Evan curled half on top of Ashton, one leg tangled between his, Ashton's hand resting gently on Evan's waist like it had always belonged there. Evan woke first. The apartment was soaked in warm morning light. Ashton was still asleep, chest rising and falling slowly, hair slightly tousled, lips parted in the most aggravatingly peaceful expression. Evan stared at him for a minute longer than necessary, then got up, found the kitchen, and started breakfast. He wasn't a gourmet, but he could scramble eggs and burn toast like a champion. By the time Ashton wandered in, barefoot and shirtless, rubbing sleep from his eyes, the kitchen smelled like something vaguely edible. "You cook now?" Ashton murmured, voice gravelly with sleep. "I'm domesticated," Evan said. "Be afraid." Ashton leaned against the counter. "You're still wearing my tie." "I sleep in styled." "I noticed the toothbrush." Evan paused. "Oh, I didn't put it there by accident." Evan swallowed. Cool. They didn't talk about labels, about what this was. Not yet. But Evan's smile lingered long after he left that morning. At work, Mariana struck like a hurricane in heels. "Big shift," she announced to the team, slapping down a presentation mock-up so colorful it practically glowed. The client wants bold, edgy. We're scrapping half the concept and going full rebrand. Evan blinked. But that's weekends. Ashton, and our mental health. Mariana shrugged. That's advertising, darlings, they argued. Loudly. In Mariana's office. In the hallway. Over emails, texts, even an impromptu debate over salad toppings during lunch. But once the dust settled, they fell into rhythm again. Their arguments fueled creativity. Their bickering spawned better taglines. Their proximity made everything easier. Coworkers, rivals, partners. Something unspoken. Something steady. It happened on a Wednesday night. They were leaving late again, alone in the elevator, both worn down by edits and endless revisions. Ashton leaned against the wall, eyes half-lidded. Evan stood across from him, arms crossed. I'm not saying the teal background is a war crime, Ashton said, dry. I'm just saying I might report you to HR. Evan snorted. You wouldn't dare. Try me. The elevator hummed softly as it descended. Something shifted. Evan stepped closer. Just a breath, then another. He was inches from Ashton now, and neither of them looked away. Then, Evan leaned in. He kissed Ashton. Soft. Sure. No hesitation. Ashton didn't move for a second, caught off guard. Then he surged forward, kissing back like he'd been waiting all day. The elevator dinged at the lobby. They pulled apart slowly, foreheads brushing. No words, just breath, just the warmth still sparking between them. They walked out together, shoulders brushing. Evan smiled to himself. The tie was still around his neck. And this time, Ashton didn't ask for it back. Chapter 4, My Arch-Nemesis Has a Jawline and Jealousy Issues. The first time Ashton noticed Julian, it wasn't the guy's portfolio or pitch voice that irritated him. It was the way Julian looked at Evan. Julian had been hired as a freelance creative for the final phase of the Oasis Water campaign. Young, fresh out of a top-tier design program, all charm and casual blazers and floppy curls that made interns swoon. His work was good, undeniably. Mariana liked him. But Ashton hated him. Not because Julian wasn't competent, but because from the very first meeting, he'd leaned too close when Evan was talking, smiled too brightly at his jokes, and laughed loud, too loud, at every single thing Evan said, even when it wasn't funny. The kind of laugh that said, I'd love to see you outside of office hours. Preferably shirtless. And the worst part, Evan was oblivious. Oblivious and glowing. Ashton sat across the table, fingers tight around his stylus as Evan and Julian compared color palettes and screen transitions. Evan's smile was easy, relaxed. It was the same smile he gave Ashton, but Ashton was starting to wonder if it meant the same thing anymore. Julian leaned closer to Evan's screen. This gradient? Brilliant. Seriously, I've worked with senior art directors who don't think like this. Evan flushed slightly, brushing a stray lock of hair behind his ear. Oh, thanks. It's not that deep, really, just playing with contrast. Ashton's eye twitched. Later, in the break room, Evan caught Ashton glowering into his coffee mug like it had personally offended him. Okay, Evan said, leaning against the counter. You look like someone switched your espresso with hot garbage. What's up? Ashton looked up, jaw sharp, voice carefully neutral. Nothing, Evan snorted. Sure, totally convincing. He waited. Ashton didn't speak. Is this your possessive era? Evan asked, raising an eyebrow. Because if so, you're being about as subtle as a siren in a library. Ashton didn't answer. But 2 hours later, while they were grabbing extra mood board samples from the storage closet, Ashton backed Evan against the shelves and kissed him like he was drowning. It was rough, desperate. His hands on Evan's hips, Evan's breath caught between laughter and surprise. When they broke apart, Evan's voice was a breath. You okay? Ashton leaned in again, this time slower. No. Evan didn't push him away. That weekend, they went to brunch at a cozy cafe tucked into a quiet corner of town. Ashton had insisted it was nothing. Just food. I'm hungry. You're annoying. Let's eat. But when Evan arrived and saw a woman with the same steel-gray eyes and sharp cheekbones as Ashton sitting at the table, sipping something green and judgmental, he paused. This is Lena, Ashton said dryly. My younger sister. Lena, this is Evan. Lena barely looked up from her phone. Oh, the guy my brother won't shut up about. Ashton choked on his water. Evan grinned. Nice to meet you, too. Lena tilted her head, assessing him. You're shorter than I imagined. Yeah, well, you're louder than I imagined. Ashton looked between them like he was trapped between two snipers. Please don't become friends. But Lena was already smiling. He's cute. You're lucky. Ashton flushed. Evan tried not to look smug. Tried and failed. Brunch ended with Lena pulling Evan into a quick hug and whispering, "Don't let him brood too hard. He does that thing where he won't talk about feelings, but will aggressively rearrange furniture. It's weird." "Duly noted," Evan whispered back. By Thursday, the campaign was in its final sprint. Tension buzzed through the office like electricity. Evan and Ashton were burning through energy drinks, ideas, and late-night edits like pros. Julian, unfortunately, was still hovering. At the team happy hour, Evan was tucked in a booth with a whiskey sour, eyes glazed from hours of screen time. Julian slid in beside him, closer than necessary. "You looked wiped," Julian said, handing him a refill. "Thought you might need a drink. And maybe a massage after." Evan laughed, surprised. "I'm not that dramatic." Julian leaned in, close enough that his breath brushed Evan's jaw. "You're cute when you're stressed." It hit Evan then, clearly. Julian wasn't just friendly. And then, out of the corner of his eye, Evan saw Ashton at the bar, watching. Frozen. Evan shifted, gently placing the drink aside. "Julian, look, you're great, really, but I'm kind of not available." Julian blinked. "Oh, I didn't. Sorry, I just thought there was a vibe." "There's not," Evan said gently but firmly, "but I appreciate the offer." Julian smiled awkwardly and left. Evan looked back toward the bar. Ashton was gone. The fight happened in the parking lot. Evan found Ashton by his car, arms crossed, jaw clenched tight enough to cut glass. "You saw that?" Evan asked. Ashton didn't answer. Evan walked closer. "You're mad." "Should I be?" "I turned him down." "You let him flirt with you for 2 weeks," Ashton snapped, and said nothing. Evan flinched. "Because it wasn't serious. And because... What exactly are we, Ashton? You kiss me in closets, but won't say a damn thing about it in the light of day." Ashton looked away. Silent. Evan's voice cracked. "You think I'm yours, but you don't say anything real. You just stare and expect me to guess." "I don't say it," Ashton finally said, voice low, "because I don't want to mess this up." Evan stared at him. "You think saying how you feel is going to ruin this?" Ashton exhaled slowly. "Every time I've let someone in, they've left, or regretted it, or made me regret it." Evan's expression softened. "I'm not them. I know." They stood in silence, cars idling nearby, the night wrapped around them. "I just wanted to be sure," Ashton murmured. Evan didn't reply. He turned, quietly, and left. It was almost midnight when there was a knock on Evan's apartment door. He opened it. Ashton stood there in a hoodie and slacks, holding 2 coffees. "I got your order wrong," Ashton said. "The milk's wrong. The flavor's off. It's completely undrinkable." Evan arched a brow. "Okay. But it still says your name on it. Because I bought it for you, because I was thinking about you when I did, and because I love how you drink it like you're judging it every time." Evan blinked. Ashton held out the coffee. "Let me prove I mean it. No more guessing." Evan took the cup, then leaned forward, tugged Ashton into the apartment by his hoodie, and kissed him like he'd been waiting all night. Because he had. Chapter 5. You had me at double shot no sugar. This time, it was different. There was no guessing, no stolen glances heavy with denial, no long silences, and no games masquerading as banter. Now, when Ashton kissed Evan, it wasn't because he was jealous, or because the air between them had reached a boiling point. It was because he wanted to. Plain and simple. And Evan kissed him back with the same clarity. They didn't talk about defining anything, but somehow, everything was defined anyway. They started again. Clearer. More intentional. At work, the rivalry remained, but now it was synchronized, a finely tuned machine of wit, spark, and mutual smugness. Their workflow became a kind of dance, each motion anticipating the other. Evan pitched bold visuals, Ashton nailed the structure. Ashton proposed a brand voice, Evan twisted it with edge and soul. They even started finishing each other's sentences, much to the horror of everyone around them. "Great," Charlie from Legal muttered during one of their joint presentations. "They've become sentient and merged into a single terrifying entity." Mariana, sipping from a mug that read, "You're on mute," dubbed them the dynamic duo. Evan groaned. "We're not Batman and Robin." "You're right," Ashton replied with a smirk. "We're clearly Holmes and Watson." "Do not flatter yourself." Outside of work, things softened. They held hands on the walk home like it was nothing. Ate greasy takeout on Evan's couch while arguing over fonts. Cooked on weekends. Well, Ashton cooked. Evan danced barefoot in the kitchen and criticized his knife skills. One Saturday, Ashton brought over groceries and quietly left a hoodie draped on the back of Evan's chair. It stayed there. By the next weekend, there was a matching toothbrush in Evan's bathroom, a second coffee mug in the cabinet, a bottle of Ashton's cologne on the dresser that Evan pretended not to use, and absolutely did. Then came the college reunion. Evan had dreaded it. Meeting Ashton's old friends, the polished, successful group that had known him when he was just another overachieving finance major, he'd nearly backed out twice. But Ashton had laced their fingers together outside the restaurant and said, "They'll love you, and if they don't, we're leaving." No questions. Evan stayed, and they did love him, because Evan, in all his chaotic, sharp-edged glory, was magnetic. By the end of the night, one of Ashton's oldest friends patted him on the back and said, "You're less uptight now. I get it. He's good for you." Ashton had just smiled and replied, "Yeah, he really is." Their campaign, the crown jewel of the Oasis rebrand, launched on a Tuesday. By Thursday, it had gone viral. The ads were everywhere: subways, billboards, TikToks. People praised the aesthetic, the messaging, the unexpected humor in hydration. It was perfect, until it wasn't. The following week, a larger brand released a shockingly similar campaign. Same tone, same taglines, same visuals, only cheaper, flashier, and with a bigger budget. When Mariana stormed into the office that morning, she looked murderous. "They stole it," she hissed, throwing down a printout. "Exact phrasing. Their pitch team had a mole, a freelancer. Julian." Evan's stomach dropped. "He copied us. They're launching a full sweep of their new brand in the next 48 hours, Mariana growled. "If we don't counter it, our entire reputation goes under." Ashton clenched his jaw. "We need to go public. Prove it was ours first." "But that risks making it a public feud," Mariana warned. "Are you ready to burn bridges?" Evan looked at Ashton. Ashton looked back. "Let's make it unforgettable," Evan said. "Our version. The right version." They stayed at the office until midnight, rebuilding their pitch from scratch, but this time with teeth. They added behind-the-scenes footage, development logs, timestamps, sketches from months ago. Ashton contacted their clients with calm fury. Evan used their design platform to launch a reactive campaign titled "Drink from the Source." It worked. Their content dominated social media. People rallied behind them, praising originality and calling out the copycats. By Friday, the rival company had backtracked and issued a weak apology. Mariana walked into their shared workspace with a fresh bottle of champagne and 3 glasses. "You two are monsters," she said, raising a toast. "Delicious, caffeinated monsters." Evan laughed, exhausted. Ashton winked at him across the table. Later that evening, as the office emptied out, Evan stayed behind, staring at the empty pitchboard like it was both a battlefield and a shrine. Ashton stepped in behind him. "You okay?" "I wanted to cry, or punch something, or eat 17 cupcakes." "You can do all 3, Ashton said. "Preferably in that order." Evan turned. "You've always had my back, even when I wanted to throw a stapler at your head." Ashton moved closer, voice softer. "I love all your versions, even the violent ones." Evan grinned, crooked, tired, fond. Then he pulled Ashton into the nearest empty office and kissed him breathless. That night, they curled up in Evan's apartment, the air still warm from wine and takeout. Evan's hands found Ashton's shirt first, tugging gently until buttons slipped free. Ashton answered with slow kisses down Evan's throat, murmured promises between laughter and low gasps. They moved together with the same unspoken synchronicity they had at work. Only this time it wasn't for a client or a deadline. It was for them. The moment deepened. Clothes fell away. Kisses turned hungry. Then tender again. Evan tangled his fingers in Ashton's hair. "You still smug?" "Always," Ashton breathed against his skin. "But I'm yours." That night, they made love, slow and sure, full of whispered truths and soft moans that filled the space between breaths. Later, wrapped in tangled sheets, Evan traced circles on Ashton's back and whispered, "You had me at double shot, no sugar." Ashton kissed the inside of his wrist. "And you had me the moment you wore my tie just to be annoying." They laughed and fell asleep, legs tangled and hearts finally on the same page. Chapter 6. Our love is caffeinated, petty, and permanent. 1 year later, the world had changed, just enough to be beautiful. Halden Rowe's Oasis campaign didn't just succeed, it exploded. Industry awards, viral metrics, a new wave of clients begging for the Evan and Ashton treatment. Mariana had taken one look at the data, downed half a bottle of champagne in the office lounge, and promoted them both by the end of the month. Evan became creative director. Ashton stepped into head of strategy. And the once infamous rivalry that had fueled weeks of office betting pools, dead and buried. Not because they stopped bickering, God no, but because everyone now understood that every glare, every sarcasm-laced email, every color-coded sticky note was just foreplay of a more permanent kind. They were officially together. Publicly. Shamelessly. Evan had made it official with a grand, dramatic kiss in the break room after an important pitch, one where Ashton had nailed the close and Evan had walked up, pulled him by the tie, and kissed him in front of half the staff. The reaction had been immediate. Charlie from legal owed Beth from admin $50. Mariana had slow clapped. And from then on, the bets stopped. Instead, their coworkers came for relationship advice. How do you not kill each other over feedback? What's your couple communication style? Do you still share a Google Calendar? Or are you just reading each other's minds now? They deflected with humor. But the truth was simple. They'd found their rhythm. Their mornings were chaos, laced with affection. Ashton would wake first, usually already dressed and reading the news with a mug in hand. Evan would stumble in 10 minutes later, hair wild, blanket half-draped around his shoulders, holding out his hand like a gremlin demanding tribute. Ashton would give him coffee, always the right kind, and on the side, a sticky note. Some were sweet. You make Mondays better. Some were dumb. You're my type, Times New Roman. Some were downright painful. You auto-complete me. Evan groaned every time, but he kept every single one in a drawer labeled emotional crimes. In return, Evan brought Ashton muffins when deadlines loomed, whispered reminders to blink during long meetings, and occasionally sat on his lap in the middle of stressful days just to force a break. They still argued over fonts, still debated margins and color palettes like the fate of civilization rested on kerning. But now there was laughter under the tension. Fondness curled at the corners of their words. They could fight and still hold hands 5 minutes later. Ashton moved in officially 6 months ago. It started with him leaving more and more of his things at Evan's place. A second toothbrush, his favorite hoodie, then a drawer, then a second drawer. Then one night, Ashton had looked up from the couch where he was typing something on his laptop and said, "Why are we pretending this isn't permanent?" Evan blinked. "You want a lease agreement? I want a closet." Evan had laughed, then nodded. "Fine, but I'm keeping the ugly lamp." "The lava lamp?" "Yes." "God help me," Ashton sighed. "I'm in love with a man who thinks liquid glitter is a personality." But Evan cleared out half the closet space without a fight. They started hosting dinner parties, too. Evan cooking dangerously without measurements, Ashton setting the table like a Michelin-starred host. Their families met over awkward brunches and wine. Evan's mom hugged Ashton like he'd already been adopted. Ashton's sister Lena just said, "Told you he was the one." Evan blushed for half a day. They traveled together, work conferences that turned into weekend getaways. A trip to Vienna that ended with them slow dancing in a hotel lobby after too much champagne. A weekend cabin retreat where Ashton proposed the idea of adopting a cat. Evan immediately vetoed it until he saw one named Mocha with a lazy eye and a love of warm laundry. They brought him home the next day. The office at Halden and Rowe was quiet now, after hours, golden with low lights and dust motes drifting through still air. The kind of silence that wrapped around the walls like a secret. Evan stood by the main presentation board, fingers brushing across leftover campaign sketches. A dozen concepts that had once consumed their lives now lived here as proof that they had built something. Together. He turned when he heard footsteps. Ashton entered with 2 coffee cups in hand, sleeves rolled to his elbows, tie loosened like he always did when it was just them. He looked good, casual but sharp, warm. The kind of good that made Evan want to lean into him and never move again. "You're poison," Ashton said, offering the coffee. Evan took it. Smelled it. Double shot, no sugar. Always. Evan didn't take a sip. Instead, he set it down and stepped into Ashton's space, sliding his arms around his waist. They swayed together without music. Just quiet. "Still the only rival I ever wanted." Evan murmured into his chest. Ashton kissed the top of his head, then tilted his face up, pressed a kiss to his lips. Soft, deep, promising. Evan smiled against his mouth. You buying me coffee was basically a love confession, wasn't it? Ashton's voice was low. Every time. They kissed again and again, until everything else faded. The lights, the work, the past. Only the warmth between them remained, solid, permanent. The story that began with caffeine and insults had become a life. One made of slow mornings, shared closets, petty arguments over sans serif fonts, laughter, mess, kisses stolen between meetings, notes left on mirrors, coffee cups left beside pillows, not enemies, not rivals, just love. Caffeinated, petty, and forever.